Today is November 28th, 2018. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Roger Rensvold in Midwest City, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
Geddes, South Dakota.
G-E...
Geddes.
Okay. South Dakota. When's your birthday?
October 14th, 1945.
1945. Who's your father?
Roger Frederick Rensvold. Roger F. Rensvold.
Okay. And your mother?
Charlotte Maureen Berry, B-U-R-Y. That's how I got my middle name, Roger Berry.
Yes, okay. Did you go through school in Geddes?
No, we moved down to Duncan, Oklahoma when I was about 3 years old. My dad took a job with Halliburton Company. He was in the service in 1945 in Kyoto, Army of Occupation. Mom was at home with her father, which is the doctor in that little town. He delivered me. The attending nurse was my grandmother. We lived with them for the first year and a half until Dad came home. Then we went to Vermillion, where he worked on a master's degree in chemistry. And after he finished that, we went down to Duncan.
Okay.
I spent the rest of my school years there.
Okay. You graduated high school what year?
1963.
1963. Who was your favorite teacher?
In high school, probably Mr. Nottingham. He's a chemistry teacher.
Why was he your favorite?
Well, I was always interested in science. My dad was a chemist. I had improper guidance when I was a kid. I always thought I had great aptitude in natural sciences. And in fact, I was good, but not good enough in math. I finally wound up in the social sciences, which turned out to be quantitative enough, with statistics and everything else.
What did you do for recreation in high school?
I was a nerd. I was in science club, chess club briefly, National Honor Society, did science fair projects, went to National Science Fair 1 year in 1963. Never played sports. I was the tallest kid in the class. The coach was always trying to get me to go out for basketball. I went out one time to make him happy and put one of his best players in the hospital almost. And he talked to me later and said, "Roger, you're right. You belong in the science club." A real geek, like that.
What did you do after high school?
Well, I went to college and got embroiled in Republican politics. This is around the time of the Goldwater campaign and all of that. And then I had a spell of ill health. Never quite sure what happened. They thought it was hepatitis. It could have been toxic hepatitis. I'm working in the laboratory there. But I was trying to squeeze 4 years of college into 5, and the draft board wasn't buying that. So I looked around for an alternative to carrying a rifle to 11 Bush, and found out I qualified for helicopter flight training.
Where'd you go to college?
OU.
OU.
In Norman, yeah.
Okay. What'd you study at OU?
Physics.
Physics.
Physics, yeah.
Okay.
With no great degree of success.
You attend the OU football games?
Under duress. I was a member of the band for 1 year, so I had to go to every game. After that, never.
Okay.
Now, I'm totally non-sports. If you asked me who won the World Series last year, I couldn't tell you.
And you received your degree what year?
I received my degree much later. I left OU without a degree.
Okay.
I went to Warrant Officer flight training. You didn't need a degree to be a Warrant Officer helicopter pilot. Went to Vietnam. Went to Germany. I was taking college courses along the way. Then came back home, became an instructor pilot at Fort Rucker, went to night school, and started going back to school again. And my grades up until then had been mediocre, but as an adult I made nothing but A's. Well, typical story, common story. And I started a master's degree and got picked up for the Navy Test Pilot School.
And when did you join the military?
1968. No, February 1969.
February 1969.
Yeah.
Now, did you have a boot camp?
Yeah, it was at Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Okay, so you joined the Army.
Army, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so it wasn't boot camp; it was basic training.
basic training, yes.
Right.
Tell me about basic.
It was terrible because in order to qualify for flight training, I had to weigh less than 200 pounds for my height. I weighed 230. I had 1 month to lose 30 pounds, which was effectively a fast. And I just barely made it, but I showed up with basic training wasted. I hadn't been eating for a month. So it took a while for me to get through basic training. I had some rather unpleasant experiences in basic training.
What type of training did you have in basic?
Well, it was just straight Army training, shining your shoes and arranging your socks and running and doing push-ups and shooting a rifle and stuff like that.
Were you in Tigerland?
What?
Were you in Tigerland?
Tigerland? Never heard of it.
No, where'd you go to basic?
Fort Polk, Louisiana. This was in 1969.
Well, Tigerland's at Fort Polk.
Well, that before my time.
Okay.
Or after my time, rather.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was basic geared toward Vietnam?
Yes, absolutely. Everybody there knew they were going to Vietnam in some capacity or another. That was right after Tet 68.
Yes.
And the Army had taken a couple of big hits there, and that's how I got into helicopter flight training. Previously, 20/20 vision was required, and I wore glasses. But in Tet 68, they lost so many helicopter pilots they couldn't be so fussy anymore. I didn't really appreciate that fact. I was just happy for a chance to fly. I guess they reasoned if a round came close enough to shoot your glasses off, it'd be the least of your problems.
What's your most vivid memory of basic?
Trying to pass the PT tests. That was miserably difficult for me because I was such a non-jock. Ultimately, I just got a kiss in the cheek and shipped off to flight school. Understand the Army's demand, the Army's needs in those days were so extreme that they needed every warm body. And I'd already been accepted for flight training, so the basic training command said, "Oh, let them deal with him," and they shipped him off.
The PT test consisted of what?
The physical fitness test?
Yes.
At that time, it was grenade throw and running a mile, and push-ups and sit-ups and overhead bars, monkey bars, and stuff like that. It's a lot simpler now. Now it's just push-ups and sit-ups and a run.
Yes. Okay. So after basic training, where'd you go?
Flight school.
And flight school.
Fort Walters, Texas, in the first instance. That was the primary helicopter school. And then on to Fort Rucker for advanced training.
Fort Walters is Mineral Wells?
Walters? Mineral Wells, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about flight school at Fort Walters.
It was fun. Once you got the hang of it, of course, you're flying a helicopter, the most difficult maneuver in a helicopter is the one you've got to master first, and that's hovering. Because if you can't hover the helicopter, you can't get it out of the parking lot, so to speak. So that was a struggle. I went through a couple of instructors. Hi, Mother M. Our priest just walked in. We went through a couple of instructors. I went through a couple of instructors before I found one who would teach me how to hover. After that, I did fairly well. Okay. I was not a great pilot until much later in my career when I went to test pilot school.
Okay. What helicopters were you flying at Fort Walters?
I was in the last flight to fly the OH-13 as a primary trainer. That's the Bell Sioux with the big bubble nose, seen on the old Whirlybirds movies. Mm-hmm. I flew that. The other people flew TH-55s and OH-23s, 27s.
And your flight training at Fort Walters lasted how long?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
What's your most vivid memory of Fort Walters?
Oh, so many. Probably the most gratifying memory was successfully soloing and being thrown in the swimming pool at the Holiday Inn. That was part of the ritual. The bus would stop on the way back from the flight line, and the people who had soloed that day got thrown in.
Tell me about your solo flight.
My solo flights?
Yes.
They don't do that anymore, and it's a shame because it was where you really learned how to fly. They would give you what they thought was the bare minimum necessary, and then they would give you a helicopter and kick you out solo and say, go fly for an hour. And you had to practice pinnacle approaches and terrain landings and clearings and stuff like all by yourself. Mm-hmm. And of course you scared yourself to death any number of times, but that's the process of learning. I don't think no one flies solo anywhere anymore.
Tell me about your instructors.
Well, they were typically older men. They were contractors. They worked for a contractor called Southern Airways of Texas. All of them had learned how to fly in World War II or before. They were my father's age or older. And they were very gruff and very demanding. Didn't have much luck with me. I finally found a guy that was a lot younger who learned how to fly a couple of years before that, and then gotten out and gone to work for the contractor. He was in his 30s, and he was more like a big brother figure than a gruff father figure. And he taught me how to, we broke the code. I learned how to hover, went out and soloed, did my thing. And it was not downhill, but up from there.
Okay. What, tell me about the quarters at Fort Walters. What type of quarters did you have?
The quarters at Fort Walters were World War II barracks. They were built toward the end of World War II. They were concrete block, two-story construction, 3 men to a room, concrete floors, concrete block walls.
You have to watch out
Ambulance in
for
the background.
noises.
Yeah. I'm surprised we haven't heard any airplanes yet.
What was the attitude of the people in Mineral Wells toward you?
I scarcely met anybody from Mineral Wells. Duncan, my hometown, was only 60, 70 miles away. When I had a weekend pass, I would call Dad and he'd come down and get me. I'd spend the weekend at home with the family and then go back down there.
Okay. And your flight training lasted how long?
Well, in Mineral Wells is only part of it. The flight training lasts the whole year. The second half, after Christmas, was at Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Okay.
That's where we learned how to fly Hueys.
Fort Walters, how long?
Fort Walters was, I think, 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah. It was until Christmas of that year, and then after Christmas we went to Fort Rucker.
Okay. Tell me about now. Fort Walters was that your primary training?
Right.
Okay. And Fort Rucker was
Advanced.
Advanced. Tell me about the advanced training.
Well, of course, the advanced training, the most difficult part of it was the instrument qualification, learning how to fly at night in weather, and learning to fly the larger helicopters. We all flew Hueys in the first instance. A handful of people went on to Cobra transition and Chinook transition, but most people went to Vietnam from there.
Okay. Now, did you fly fixed wing anytime?
Later in my career, I had to be chosen for test pilot school first, and fixed wing qualification was a requirement for that. But having received my degree in science from Troy State and working on my master's, the Army picked me to go to the Navy test pilot school at Tufts River. That's where they send their people. And en route, they 3 years advanced warning. They gave me airplane fixed wing transition and then OB1 transition. I spent another whole year in Germany building my airplane time.
Now, how did your advanced training compare with your primary?
It was no easier, but it was different. Obviously, all beginnings are difficult. The advanced training, the most difficult thing about it was instrument flying, which is very counterintuitive. You can't believe what your body is telling you. You have to believe what you see in front of you on the instruments. And that's uncommonly difficult for most people. Later in my career, I was an instructor pilot in that same area. I taught that.
Let me back up. Did you have a class on the basics of flight?
Oh, many. I mean, you're talking about classroom classes?
Yes.
Well, they were integrated with the training at Fort Walters.
Okay.
And of course, this classroom training integrated with the training at Fort Rucker, too. It was half a day in the classroom, half a day on the flight line. Okay. And half the night shining your boots.
Yes. How you doing?
I'm all right.
And the advanced lasted how long?
Let's see. 6 months. I graduated in 3.5 months, something like that. I was out there in April.
Okay. Is that when you got your commission?
Warrant.
Warrant officer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got your warrant one day, and the next day you went back to the same auditorium with your bars on. You got your wings.
Okay. And you received when did you receive your wings?
That was in early 1970. It was April 1970.
April 1970. So from Fort Rucker, where'd you go?
In Fort Rucker, I went to Vietnam.
How'd you go to Vietnam?
I swam. No, no. The way any officer goes to Vietnam, you have 30 days leave and 6 months advance pay, and they tell you to contact the nearest military installation and pick up a port call, and I did. Drove over to Fort Sill, and
Now,
they gave me
what's a port call?
A port call is orders. giving you a flight time and paperwork and all of that. And then I flew out to California. Did a tour of the West Coast, saw some relatives out there, and kind of saying goodbye to everybody. I went to, interestingly enough, the next to the last night I was in country, I was visiting friends in San Francisco and Berkeley. A friend of mine was in school there, working on his PhD. We went out for pizza and got gassed. Came out of the Pizza Hut, walked right into a demonstration, got a snoot full of tear gas. And the very next night, I went to a production of Hair in San Francisco, which was memorable because that was the same day they had the Kent State shootings. That kind of anchors this whole thing chronologically. And here I was sitting in the audience in civilian clothes and my short haircut, and knowing I was going to get an airplane and go to Vietnam the next day. It was kind of an ambivalent situation, but duty calls, and off we go. And
you left for Vietnam when?
Well, I extended Vietnam. I stayed with the 1st Cavalry Division.
No, you left. You flew to Vietnam the date you left for Vietnam.
Yeah. The day I left to Vietnam?
Yes.
That was in April sometime. I have to check the date.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But
and the flight, you left
Travis Air Force
Travis,
Base.
And
yeah.
From Travis to where?
Oh, it was a Stretch 8, all tourist class, and it didn't have any legs at all. I think first we went to Hawaii, and then we went to Midway, and then we went to the Philippines, the big naval base used to have in the Philippines, whatever it was called, and refilled each time, and then we went to Saigon.
You flew,
landed
at what?
We landed in Saigon at
Tanzania?
At what's the name of the airport in Saigon anyway?
Now the Tanzania base is just north of
Tanzanite,
Saigon.
yeah.
Okay.
Tanzanite, yeah.
Okay.
I take that back. We landed at the Air Force Base at Long Binh, which was just a couple of miles from Tanzanite. Yeah.
When you got off the airplane,
It was the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night.
Yeah.
What was your reaction?
Well, we were all sitting there, and the curtains were all down. The plane was blacked out on the outside. We couldn't open our curtains. Didn't want any lights, and we landed. And the door opens after an eternity, and here comes a captain in jungle fatigues, sweat stains down the middle of his chest. It's the middle of the night, okay? And we got off the airplane, and the temperature was probably 90, 95, and the humidity was 90 or 95. And we just looked at each other and said, there must be some mistake. Human beings cannot live in a place like this. And that was night, okay? There's a roll of sandbags there. We had instructions. If the siren blows, duck down behind the sandbags. That didn't happen. Went to orientation there, the Cav Academy. Learned how people crawl into barbed wire and how to keep them from doing it. Slid down a rope, simulating jumping out of a helicopter, sliding down a rope. I thought I was going to do that. And the instructor said, any pilots in the crew? No, pilots are not allowed to do this. You're too valuable. You might fall. Besides, you're going to be in the airplane flying it, not sliding down the rope. Okay, so. And from there I went to Echo Battery 82nd Artillery, which was the aviation support unit
Echo Battery 82nd.
Yeah, aviation support unit for the Division Artillery, 1st Cavalry Division in Phuc Vinh.
Okay.
3 Corps.
Oh, I remember Phuc Vinh very well.
Huh?
I remember Phuc Vinh very well.
You have to speak up. 20 years of flying destroyed my hearing.
I was in the 1st Cav.
Oh, you were?
Yes.
What, in 3 Corps?
No, we started at Ankei up to Camp Evans at I Corps.
Yeah, about 2 years before my time, yeah.
I was there 67 through 69.
Okay, you were right through Tet, right?
I was at Red Beach and the name when Tet broke up.
Poor bugger.
Yeah.
Grunt?
Oh no, I was a helicopter mechanic and crew chief.
Oh, great.
On duties. Yeah.
You know, the opportunity to die with clean boots, right?
Yeah. So you were Echo Battery, 82nd Artillery, and you were assigned.
That's the Ash and Trash Unit, Aviation Unit 4, Division Artillery.
Okay, Division Artillery.
And we were at the Division Base Camp at Phuc Vinh in 3 Corps.
What quarters did you have at Phuc Vinh?
Tropical huts, divided roughly with, made out of ammo crates basically, louvered sides, screening, tin roof, fans, lots of fans, small single rooms for the officers with a field desk and a bunk and a mosquito net. Pretty primitive, but it felt like home after a long day of flying.
What was the weather?
Tropical. They don't have weather in Vietnam, they have climate. There's a wet season, they have a dry season. The dry season is dry, okay, and hot, and a little bit cooler, not a lot. The wet season is wet and hotter. Now, it didn't rain all the time during the wet season, but at 4 o'clock every afternoon is regularly setting your clock. It would cloud up, it would rain, then the sun would come out again, we would all steam like clams until the sun went down around 7 o'clock.
Is this the monsoons?
Yeah, it's a monsoon, yeah.
How do you stay dry in the monsoons?
You're never really dry. The only time you're really dry is when you're out of the shower, cover yourself with baby powder, and lying quietly under your fan. That's the only time you're completely dry. My dad was a medic in the Second World War. He taught me, go to the dispensary, get these little green cans of foot powder, boric acid, and cover every square inch of your body except your eyeballs, that stuff. And I took his advice, and people got athlete's foot and stuff like that. Not nearly as bad as the grunts out in the field, of course, but there was athlete's foot and rashes and pits and stuff like that. I managed to avoid that.
What type of bunker did you have at Food Bend?
Bunker? Just a big pile of sandbags, kind of looking like a green igloo out between the huts, and we had blast walls about that high made out of sandbags at the ends of the huts. And of course, the tin roof didn't give much protection. What a lot of people did, myself included, we got these big sheets of what they call PCP, perforated steel planking. They used to make temporary runways. You've seen miles of it yourself, okay? Now you get a piece of PCP, which is about that wide and about that long, steel, you put it on your cot between the frame and your mattress. It made the cot a little bit hard, but in the middle of the night, the sirens went off, you just roll out of your bed on the floor and roll under your cot. That way, if something hit the roof and went blam, you wouldn't be spattered with pieces of roof and all that, and dead gecko and all the stuff that's up there.
So what type of missions did you fly at Food Bend?
Mostly just, that was interesting because our biggest job, we had two big jobs. The first big job was just general support for division artillery. We had a couple of fixed-wing airplanes, small scouts, that spotted artillery. But the helicopter guys did mostly stuff like flying around parts and technicians. We had a lot of equipment like anti-personnel radar in these fire bases located around Three Corps. And just like a kid, these things always got sick in the middle of the night. And we would load up a technician and a bunch of gear and fly out to a fire base in the middle of the night and then sit there, or hover, fly around overhead while they fixed this stuff. And there was a lot of night flying. And I tell you that, was I ever shot at? No, I don't think so. But I had some horrible experiences involving some combination of bad weather and night and low fuel state. Just doing that mission right there, the navigational aids were rudimentary. You had 90 minutes of fuel in a helicopter. You had triple canopy jungle full of bad guys. Pitch blackness most of the time. If you had a moon, you typically had clouds. Just very unfavorable conditions.
You were flying what helicopter?
UH-1.
UH-1.
Huey, yeah.
Well, which model?
H model.
H model, okay. Now what is the difference between the H model and Delta model? And
The difference between the D model and H model is the engine. The Lycoming 12 and Lycoming 13, more horsepower. Now, earlier models had a truncated passenger compartment. You didn't have seats on either side of the transmission well. The fuselage was a little bit narrower.
But we had the B
We had
model.
D models and we had H models.
Yeah, we had B models when I first.
Yeah, you had the old hot starting ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Who was your crew chief?
I have no idea. Many of them. We did not have fixed crews like we did. And the crew chiefs were assigned to aircraft, but the aircraft commander and the pilot were not. We just came up in rotation, and went out to whoever was flying the airplane and say, hey Chief, how's it going today? Any problems? Well, VOR isn't working. Okay, no problem. No VOR station 100 miles anyway, so.
VR.
VOR.
VOR.
It's a navigation equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you assigned to a helicopter?
No. No. The crew chiefs were assigned to helicopters.
Yes.
The pilot and co-pilot just picked up whichever helicopter was next in the order for flight.
Now, what is a mission?
What is a mission?
Yes. When you get in the helicopter, and what do you...
Oh, you go to dispatch, and the guy on they said, here, pick up Colonel so-and-so at the headquarters pad, fly him down to Fuquen, drop him off at the head shed pad, and wait for him to come back. Or fly this technician out to Fire Support Alpha, wait for him while he fixes the disarm, and then fly him back, okay? Or take this V-Bullfetzer out to Firebase Bravo and drop it off, and then go to base C and pick up their V-Bullfetzer and bring it back, things like that.
How long would a mission last?
Well, sometimes half a lifetime. No, but you had to be careful because you had such a limited fuel quantity in these aircraft. You had to plan your mission around where you could refuel. And, but I mean, with various stops here and there. And very often, dispatch would call you in the middle of the day and say, okay, where are you? Just left so-and-so and went to so-and-so. Okay, after there, go find some gas, and then go to this other base and pick up so-and-so and take him there. You were kind of like a cross between a taxi driver and a truck driver, except it flew. But after a while, it got to be about as exciting as driving a truck or driving a taxi.
Now, did you have to read the map every morning?
Well, we basically knew where everything was. We had our own maps, of course, of the AO, Area of Operation. What was of particular interest to us was the halo, not the halo, what's it called? The arc light areas. Arc light was the B-52 areas, and an hour or so in advance they would give you the grid zone, typically a grid square, of where the B-52 is going to be dropping their bombs. You wanted to stay away from that.
Well, before we flew out, they had a map on the wall, and they had it blacked out, and that's where you didn't fly airstrikes, arc light, whatever.
I think your map was probably more complicated than ours because the bad guys were keeping their heads down. This was 1970. Okay. Nixon was in the White House. He'd already made it known that we were leaving. And it was already, we knew perfectly well in Vietnam that as soon as we left, these clowns were going to lose. That was obvious. But we were going through the motions, and we were trying to get them resupplied and trained, and we were trying to keep the bad guys at bay, and the bad guys were playing the game. They weren't, they didn't want to cause any, they would pop off a rocket every now and then to remind us that they were out there. But by and large, they were keeping their heads down and restocking and resupplying. We did lose a couple of people right in my base camp right next door. A rocket hit when they were on the way to the showers and killed them. But, I knew them, but not intimately. They were NCOs, crew chiefs, It was really different, two different crowds, okay? Got along well, but we had our own hooch, we had our own club, all stuff like that. The joke was that we went to Fort Rucker to learn how to fly, and we went to Vietnam to learn how to fly with a hangover. In crack of dawn, here's the crew chief and the mechanics out in a helicopter, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, cleaning things up, topping it off. We knew perfectly, they'd been blowing dope all night long, right? But they were feeling good, okay? Here came the officers crawling through their own vomit after a hard night of drinking beer. It just, I don't know how we survived ourselves, actually.
Do you have any contact with the local people around food?
None at all. We had local girls that came in to wash our uniforms and shine our boots and stuff like that. Some of the guys had informal arrangements with them. I wouldn't go near them for a couple of reasons. One, the clap. Two, the fact that a lot of them were Viet Cong agents. They caught one of them out hiking the flight line, estimating a distance to an aircraft. They turned over to white mice. Never saw her again. No, in Vietnam, no fraternization at all.
They had the Vietnamization program.
Mm-hmm.
Were you involved in this?
No, not
Turning
directly.
Vietnam over to the local people.
I think that most of that was going on at the command level. Um, we had very little contact with the South Vietnamese. Um, we had very little respect for them. We could drive in on a day off. We'd drive into Saigon, for example. Okay, to go to the USO down there and make a phone call home. You could do that then. And mom and dad were always glad to hear from me. They took the collect call, no problem at all. And we'd drive past these guys with long fingernails and long hair selling dope and selling girls and stuff. They had been in the South Vietnamese Army as draftees. Their country was at war. They did 2 years in the Army, and they got out, and now they were hustling us. But that did not indicate a high degree of patriotic commitment in our estimation. It was understood that the South Vietnamese government was corrupt. The people hated them. The North Vietnamese government was not corrupt. The people hated them anyway. Now, the people were between a rock and a hard spot. And we weren't going to be able to do any good there. You see, a guerrilla war, a guerrilla does not have to win. All he has to do is not lose. And sooner or later, whoever he's fighting will quit. That's exactly what happened. Of course, now, give me a moment here. As the years went by, this became clear to me. We should never have been there in the first place. We were told, the whole country was told, if we lose in Vietnam, the communists are going to overrun all of Southeast Asia. They're going to go into Indonesia, going to overrun Thailand. They're going to be knocking on the door in Australia, New Guinea. And it's going to be a disaster. Okay, what happened? We lost. And what happened? Ho Chi Minh got the only thing he ever said he wanted, a unified country free of foreign interference. Now, I don't know if the people at the top really believed the lies, or if it was just some kind of realpolitik thing to keep the economy running or what. But, I am so sickened by the thought that so many people died in the service of lies. And it's been going on and going on and going on. They acquire the weapons of mass destruction in Iran, for crying out loud. Iraq, rather. What this country needs more than anything else is just a good dose of truth. I think we've sometimes forgotten how to tell the truth.
But remember, war is good business.
What?
War is good business.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Marine General, I forget his name, wrote a book back in 1910s, and War is a Racket. That was back in the days of the Banana Wars in Central America. Anyway, that's kind of off the subject. But,
Did you work with the Arvins?
No.
Did you work with the ROCs, South Koreans?
Later, when I was with the Engineer Command, this is my second tour in Vietnam, I worked a little bit with the ROCs, moving them around. The ROCs were an entirely different creature. I walked in, and there was a ROC NCO sitting, leapt to his feet and saluted immediately. They were spit, they were polished, and they had a horrible reputation. They were vicious. They were vicious to their own people. If a ROC soldier got out of line, it was not uncommon. I've heard this, I didn't see it. It was not uncommon for him to be shot by his own officers, as an example to the others. But there weren't very many there, and they were around. We knew they were good soldiers. We knew that we were glad that they were on our side.
You were in Vietnam how long the first time?
I was there for a total of 18 months.
18 months.
Yeah, after the Cavs stood down, I found a job with the Engineer Command in Long Binh, flying for a two-star general. He was the engineer commander for 3 Corps, and he'd spent 30 years in the Corps here in the States. He looked like Santa Claus, the buzz cut. They pulled him out of retirement, sent him to Vietnam to build bridges and culverts and stuff like that. And the last thing he wanted to do was go anywhere near the sound of a gun going off. He had grandchildren at home. So we enjoyed flying him around. He kept us out of harm's way. He had his own mess steward, his own kitchen, his own bar, all air conditioned. We were guests there every night. We went to happy hours at 5 o'clock, went to the bar, had a drink, And then we had looked the seating tape. We had the seating chart. He put different people at his head table very nice so we could talk to people and find what was going on. You wanted to make sure you were there, so if you were, of course you had to put on a fresh flight suit and boots, which had been prepared for you while you were out flying. And then we would go in and have a great meal, and when I wasn't seated at the head table, there were a couple of guys I sat with most of the time, and the little waitress would come around and drop a bottle of Jack Daniels in a nice bucket by our table, she knew we drank that. And then we would all go to the bar after the dinner and watch a first-run feature film on 16 millimeter. It was sent over to us from Hollywood. We went back to our air-conditioned hooches. We had our own pool. It was nominally a fire sump, but
You had
big hole.
air-conditioned hooches.
Huh?
You had air-conditioned hooches.
Yeah. We had to supply our own air conditioners, but we had enough electricity to go around. See, engineer
I never
command.
saw an air conditioner.
Engineer command. I mean, we had first call on everything that came in the country, right? Including generators. But then we had this big hole in the ground. It was the fire sump. You know, throw the fire hose in, pump up, put a plastic liner in it, put a chlorinator in it, turn it into a swimming pool. And we had the Red Cross girls living across the street, and the Red Cross girls would come over and party with us and swim in our pool. It was not bad duty. And here's the thing. Get your head around this. 10 miles away, guys were sleeping on the ground, being eaten by mosquitoes, and getting shot up every day, and getting malaria and dysentery and all kinds of horrible stuff. It was surrealistic. Surrealistic. Did you ever see the movie Apocalypse Now? You remember the surrealistic atmosphere of that show? That was precisely what it was. It was so surrealistic that we were living like guests at a resort, and 5 or 10 miles away, people were dying in the weeds. It's amazing we didn't have a civil war among the troops. Of course, they didn't know. Well, I don't know. We had some good times there in the engineer command.
And that first trip to Vietnam.
First calf.
Yes. What's your best memory?
Best memory was... My best memory is intimately associated with my worst memory. I've never told this before. I will. Never told my wife about it. The reason I never told her about it, I still have nightmares about it sometimes. I'd just gotten back from a short flight. I had about 900 pounds JP4 on board. Got a call to fly down to Long Bin and pick up Exornum and, fly it back. Okay, well, it was like midnight and the POL point was closed. They would have had to call for a truck and all that. I said, nah, I think we could make it. And we took off and started flying down toward Long Bin. You can see the lights from Long Bin 50, 60 miles away. And damn me if the lights didn't get any bigger. And the gas gauge kept going that way. The lights weren't getting any bigger. And we had triple canopy jungle, but I don't know if we had unforecast upper air winds or what I had done. I'd made a horrible, horrible, horrible mistake, okay? One that never made again. Never, ever, ever leave the wire unless you have a full tank of gas. Never, okay? I beat that into everybody that came after me. No matter what they tell you to do, never leave base without a full tank of gas. My co-pilot, new in country, my crew chief, were blissfully unaware. I mean, they just so absolutely trusted me, the W2, the senior guy, that I knew what I was doing. And I didn't know if we were going to make it or not. And I could not imagine making a forced auto rotation in that triple truck canopy jungle in the middle of the night. We had a joke about that. If you had to make an auto rotation at night, turn the landing light. If you don't like what you see, turn it off. Because what you see right there is where you're going, okay? We landed, and the pump at the fuel point wasn't working. We stood on the blivet and squeezed enough fuel into the helicopter to get us to a place where they had an operational fuel truck. But I have never been so terrified in my entire life, and I couldn't show it, okay? And, in later years, you ever heard of the parallel universe theory? It's from quantum mechanics. they explain certain paradoxes in quantum mechanics by saying that wherever there's a probabilistic split, there are actually two universes are created at that point. There are an infinite number of universes out there. Every time there's a chance happening where it could go one way, it could go the other way, there are two universes generated. The other one is totally inaccessible to us, of course, but I've been haunted by the idea that somewhere out there there's a universe in which I ran out of gas, and I crashed that helicopter in the jungle. And I survived, and I killed all the people on board, and I was court-martialed and disgraced, and everything else good to happen in my life, going to graduate school, getting a PhD, none of that happened. Never met my wife. Never, life ends right there. So that's the stuff that nightmares are made of. When you really think about what could have happened. Happiest experience is seeing that JP-4 flowing into that helicopter after that flight. That was happy.
Now, was that also your worst memory of Vietnam?
Worst memory and the happiest memory. The worst memory was the event leading up to the happiest memory. That was in 7 Corps.
Okay.
They're coming to take me away.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
So you in Vietnam how long?
18 months.
18 months, okay. Tell me about coming home.
I didn't. I took an inter-theater transfer directly to Germany. That was one of the conditions of my extension. They wanted me to stay in Vietnam for an extra 6 months, and I did because I could go to the engineer command, learn how to fly another helicopter.
Which helicopter did you?
And that was the OH-6, I think. Yeah. The Bell Scout. I'm forgetting all this stuff as time goes by. I've got about 500 hours in the aircraft now. Now I learned how to fly that, a little 4-seater. And then I got my unit of choice after I left, and one of the things I needed for my degree was a foreign language. So I thought I'd have better luck with German than I had with Russian. I had no luck with Russian. So I requested Germany, and that was another whole adventure right there.
And where'd you go in Germany?
I went to, first instance, I went to 34th Signal Battalion Aviation Section. The 34th Signal Battalion was the 7th Corps Signal Battalion.
Located where?
Stuttgart, Echterdingen.
Stuttgart, okay. When you're in Vietnam, any USO shows come through?
Never went to one.
Okay.
No. One time we took a show out to a bunch of guys at a fire base. It was a Vietnamese show, a band and dancers and all that. And that was the most uncomfortable experience of my entire life because this Vietnamese guy was up there smiling and joking and trying to get something out of the audience, and the girls were dancing, and all these dirty grunts from the fire base just sitting there glowering. I knew perfectly well that they were there because there was nothing else to do, and they'd be perfectly happy to gut every one of them. They weren't the least bit entertained by these Vietnamese. Nasty times.
What did you do in Germany?
Helicopter pilot. That's all a helicopter pilot ever did, is fly. He was a warrant officer, aviator. I was there for 2 years. 3 years, actually. Met and married my wife. Took her back to Fort Rucker. Became an instructor pilot. Instrument flight examiner. Finished my degree. And another whole adventure with fixed wing transition, and then going to Navy test pilot school, another 2 hours of tape there. And then I retired finally after flying technology exploitation, doing some stuff I still can't talk about. And went and got my PhD at Georgia Tech.
What's your dissertation
management.
topic?
What?
What's your dissertation topic?
Dissertation? Feedback-seeking behavior. How people find out how well they're doing on task. I built a game, essentially, which generated a score and kept track of how and when people stopped to ask for the score. I wrote a typical PhD dissertation about that thick and made 4 copies. And it promptly vanished into the shelves. Something anybody's looked at it since. I haven't.
And you retired
So,
when? When did you
Gloss
retire?
Perling Spiel.
When did you retire?
Let's see, it was from the Army. I formally retired in April of 1989. I'm sorry, I take that back. February 1989. February 1989. I went in February 1969, the day before Valentine's Day. I remembered how ironic that was. So I retired 20 years later, but I had 3 months of accrued leave. I used that time to go up to Atlanta and find an apartment and all that.
Okay. Now, where did you meet your wife in Germany?
Another interesting story. She was a telephone operator and translator working for the Bundeswehr, detailed to the American service, American forces, and we met over the phone.
Is she German?
She's German, yeah.
Okay.
She still is German. She has her EU passport. She's not going to give it up, particularly now. Yeah, I was out late not drinking, and I came home to my apartment. The phone was ringing, and picked it up and said, "Roger," this really cute voice, the German accent. "Where have you been? I've been so worried about you." I said, "Who the hell are you?" You know? I thought she was some girl I'd been at a party or something. Turned out that my friend John Kiley had been trying to get my phone number, and it was the middle of the night. Nothing was happening. He struck up a conversation with this girl. He thought he had a cute voice, and they decided to play a trick on his buddy Roger, and that was me. But they played the trick on me, and then I hung up, and I got a call back from John and said, "You know, I have a date with this girl, but she'd like to meet you because she thinks you have an interesting voice." So, "Oh, that's cool." So I went to his place, and they were having drinks, and I walked in, and I saw her, and she saw me, and it was kind of over from there for John. We had a party a couple weeks later, and I asked her what she wanted to drink, and she said, "I don't know, what do you recommend?" I said, "How about a martini?" She thought I meant vermouth, right? I mixed her a 10-to-1 beefeater martini and gave that to her. She's 5 feet tall and weighed about 100 pounds at the time, right? She drank that thing and staggered. I caught her, put my arm around her, impulsively kissed her on top of the head. She's 5 feet tall, and that sealed the deal right there.
So at Stuttgart, what was the reaction of the local people to you?
They saw us as cash cow. I mean, it was cordial. I mean, we had a cordial relationship with. You have to understand, the U.S. Army had been there for a long, long time. Ever since 1945, we were pretty much a part of the community. A lot of Germans spoke at least some English. I picked up German quite quickly while I was there. It was inconvenienced because I was actually learning Schwäbisch, which is a local dialect. But I did pick up some Hochdeutsch along the line, too.
What did you do after you retired? What did you do after you retired?
After I retired, I went straight from Fort Rucker, Alabama, where I was working for the test directorate, to Georgia Tech and started working on my PhD. Turned the page completely, you know. The words of Monty Python enough was something completely different. Never looked back. Put the helmet away. Never dreamed about going out and renting an airplane and flying around. Just moving right on.
Now, when did you come to Midwest City?
I came to Midwest City after we left Hong Kong. After Georgia Tech, I worked for almost 10 years at the City University of Hong Kong in China, right through the handover. Another 2-hour tape. After we left Hong Kong, we had enough money, candidly, because they bought out my contract. The new government determined that all these foreigners, they could give them a golden handshake and send them away and hire 3 locals for the price they were paying for them. So I had a chance to retire early, and they gave me an eye-watering sum of money. And I looked at it, my wife looked at it, I said, "We can't take this back to the U.S. right now. I'd have to pay George W. Bush $65,000 income tax on this." So we spent the rest of the year in Australia, sitting on a beach down in Perth, you know, drinking 4X and wine and enjoying living a good life. And then we came home, and we had a choice. We could have gone any place in the world we wanted to, really. But we made the decision that we should go to some place where one of us has the right of legal residence, and some place where at least one of us speaks the language. So that was either Germany or the U.S. And My dad was still alive at that time, living in Tulsa. My sister was still in Tulsa. I'd had a diagnosed heart problem, and OU had a good reputation for cardiology. And of course, we wanted to be near an Air Force base so we could get our cheap wine. So we kind of settled on Midwest City that way. Close to Tulsa, but not too close.
Yeah. What's your most vivid memory of your military career?
Gosh, I don't know. Kind of like asking which is the biggest crowd scene in Ben-Hur. Most vivid memory is the happiest memory was graduating from test pilot school. That was a year-long school, and it made my PhD program afterwards look like a cakewalk.
Now, what? Tell me about the test pilot school. Why is it so different?
Well, let me give you a flavor, okay? You know how to fly a helicopter, you know how to fly an airplane, you've got high hour in both. You're studying aerodynamics, which involves not quantum mechanics, differential equations, calculus. You have to be pretty good in calculus to do the academics. So you're doing academics half a year and half of the day, and then you're flying half of the day, and you're flying test profiles, and you're writing reports. And the report writing is the hard part. An hour of flying may produce 2 or 3 days of report writing. And the schedule is very strict. You have to have in a given time. But you'd come back from a day of flying, a day of class, fly in the morning, change, go to class in the afternoon, come back from class 6 o'clock with homework and all that. You walk into your cube, and there on your desk there's a operator's manual for an airplane you've seen in the hangar, but you've never been inside it. Okay, typically a jet, maybe a large Navy helicopter. And the note says, orientation flight tomorrow morning, you're the pilot in command. 6 o'clock, be there, aloha. So you take the manual and you go down the hangar, and screaming and cursing all the way, and you sit in the thing and you learn where all of the VWFETSers are, you know, and what the operation limitations are, and what the emergency procedures are, and what the maximum, minimum RPM is, and the maximum oil pressure, and all that kind of junk, and you put it on a knee pad. Then you go out the next day and you fly the damn thing. And you come back and you write a report about some aspect of its flying ability. And then for the grand finale, they ship you off to someplace you've never been. For me, it was to a Coast Guard station to fly an aircraft you've never seen before in your entire life, and do what they call a Navy preliminary evaluation. That's performance, flying qualities, suitability for a mission. Book about that thick. Had 2 weeks to get it all done. Horrible experience. I was 6'4" at that time, 6'3" now. When I got out of that, I weighed 180 pounds. And it wasn't from dieting. I was just run down to a rag. And everybody was. We all had symptoms of PTSD coming out of that school. To this day, I maintain my membership in the Society of Experimental Test Pilots, even though I haven't flown for 20 years.
Now, you went back to Vietnam a second time?
I stayed in Vietnam.
Okay, you stayed in Vietnam.
Yeah, the Cavs stood down, and I stayed in Vietnam.
Okay.
I got a leave at home for a month, and I came back and did 6 months at the Engineer Command, and then I went to Germany.
Okay. Would you join the Army again?
Now?
Yes.
Hell
Well,
no. I'm going to put my life on the line for a
If you were young
rise.
again, would you join?
If I were young and stupid, I might. If I had somebody like Uncle Roger who advised me, I definitely would not.
That's why the perfect soldier is 18 years old.
Exactly, yeah.
You'll take that
Full grown, but stupid.
You take your rifle and take that hill and charge up the hill. Our age, let's think about
You
this.
can never imagine, when you're that age, you can never imagine something bad will happen to you.
Yes.
I mean, even when you see your wingman crash and burn, oh, pity about George, couldn't happen to me. And when you're that age, you're watching a movie. You haven't internalized it.
I'd like to do a word association.
Okay,
I'll give you the more you give me your reaction.
okay.
First one is basic training.
Fear of failure,
Primary flight training.
challenge, excitement,
Advanced flight training.
challenge,
First Cav Division.
difficult. I guess satisfaction. I mean, I was doing a job. I was doing it fairly well. Um, I have never been the kind of person to form really close personal friendships. Like people stay in touch when they leave the Army. I never did. I went to my class reunion, the first class reunion in 55 years. I went to one like that. So it's kind of a montage of impressions. I can't really put my finger on one impression for the Cav.
Vietnam.
Tragedy.
Germany.
Almost said drunk. No, I guess the one word is romance. It's where I met and married my wife. The wonderful times.
Ho Chi Minh.
What?
Ho Chi Minh.
Ho Chi Minh. A mistake on our part. Let me explain that a little bit. He tried to get our help in getting the French out of his country. And we took the side of the colonialists. He went to the Russians because he had to. The Ho Chi Minh thing was a tragedy from beginning to end.
He was a communist second, a nationalist first.
Exactly, yeah. He was a nationalist first and a communist by necessity because that's where he was getting his stuff.
Lyndon Johnson.
Tragic. I'll tell you why. Lyndon Johnson was a good man. He was a complex man. He was an ambiguous man. He did a wonderful job with the Civil Rights Bill. He was inside the Angels, but he was embroiled in Vietnam. He didn't know how to get out. And it literally killed him. He went back to his ranch and died.
Richard Nixon.
Monster.
How do you want to be remembered?
Well, I probably won't be remembered at all. Don't have any children. I supervised a handful of PhD students. If anybody remembers me at all, I'd just like to be remembered as useful.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No.
Well, sir, this is a very good interview.
No, thank you.
I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview.
You're very welcome.
And again,
If you want to fill up a couple more hours of tape, you can come and talk to me about Test Pilot School in Germany and my years in Georgia Tech and my years in Hong Kong during the handover and all that. I've done everything in my life except train, be a lion tamer in the circus.
Again, this is November 28th, 2018. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Roger Rensvold in Midwest City, Oklahoma. Thank you.
Very welcome.
We get this.
Yeah. The Jesus nut, for the benefit of the civilian present, is a castellated nut about that big. It sits on top of the rotor mast. And if you're flying a Huey, that's the thing that holds the whole Vibofetzer together, you know. The Jesus nut comes off, the hub comes off, the main rotor comes off, the push-pull tubes all break, and the rotor goes one way and the aircraft goes the other way. They call it the Jesus nut because it's the only thing that stands between you and the wrath of God. And it is torqued, and it is safetied 3 different ways. And torquing, it's a big deal. You've got this big torque wrench, the torque has got to be just exactly right. Well, someone was reinstalling the rotor hub after whatever, some inspection or another. And the guy, there was an NCO there, said, "Oh, come on, don't waste your time with the torque wrench. Here, just give me that thing here. That's about right." Someone saw him do that, but assembled the rotor head without putting a torque wrench on the Jesus nut, and he was court-martialed. And we were glad to see him go.
Yes.
That's scary stuff.
Yes. Yes. On